The emergency containment field flickered with each system failure, casting an eerie blue glow across the damaged exploration vessel. Lieutenant Elena Rodriguez pressed her hand against the cracked viewport, watching the vast emptiness of space consume what remained of her ship. The last diagnostic systems blinked their final warnings. Oxygen reserves critically low, hull integrity compromised, communication arrays destroyed. She remembered the moment everything changed. The routine deep space mapping mission had turned into a nightmare with the sudden appearance of the Zincor scout ships. Their crystalline vessels had materialized without warning, cutting through her ship's advanced detection systems like they were nothing more than transparent film. The attack had been swift, precise, and utterly merciless. Now, she was the sole survivor. The memory of her crew's final moments played in her mind with brutal clarity. Captain Miller had been coordinating emergency protocols when the first energy pulse tore through the bridge. Scientific Officer Chen had been calculating escape trajectories when the ship's secondary systems collapsed. Each colleague, each friend, reduced to memory in mere moments. Elena checked her survival suit's systems. The advanced environmental protection was her only lifeline now. Designed for extended planetary exploration, the suit could recycle air, regulate temperature, and provide basic medical support for up to 72 hours. But in the vacuum of space, time was always a cruel negotiator. A distant vibration caught her attention. Something was approaching. The Zincor scout ship moved with an almost organic grace, its surface shifting between transparency and a deep metallic blue. Elena had studied their species extensively during her xenological training, but nothing could have prepared her for seeing their technology up close. The vessel seemed to breathe, its external membrane pulsing with complex energy patterns that defied conventional understanding of mechanical design. Capture was inevitable. Massive energy tendrils extended from the scout ship, enveloping the remains of her vessel. Elena felt a strange sensation of weightlessness as her damaged ship was drawn into the larger vessel's docking bay. Her training kicked in. Remain calm. Observe. Analyze. The survival suit would protect her, and her mind was her greatest weapon. The docking process was unlike anything in human engineering. Instead of mechanical clamps and pressurization systems, the ship seemed to absorb her vessel, its membrane flowing like liquid metal, creating a seamless connection. Warning indicators on her suit's display began to dance, unknown energy signatures, atmospheric composition changing, gravitational forces fluctuating. Elena took a deep breath. She had trained for first contact scenarios, for potential hostile encounters, but this was beyond any simulation. The Zincor were not just another spacefaring species. They represented a level of technological advancement that made human engineering look primitive by comparison. Metallic tendrils began to probe her survival suit, scanning, analyzing. She remained perfectly still, knowing that any sudden movement could be interpreted as a threat. Her xenological training emphasized patience, observation, and minimal provocation during first encounters. The alien environment was a symphony of impossible colors and shifting geometries, walls that were not walls, surfaces that breathed and pulsed with internal energy, corridors that seemed to reconfigure themselves with each passing moment. Elena realized quickly that everything around her was alive in some fundamental way. Not organic, not mechanical, but something entirely different. Restraints formed around her, not physical bonds, but energy fields that seemed to anticipate her every potential movement. They were intelligent, adaptive, reading her body's micro-movements and adjusting accordingly. This was not imprisonment in any traditional sense, but a dynamic, responsive containment system. As she was transported deeper into the Zincor vessel, Elena understood that her survival would depend on her ability to understand, to adapt, and to navigate a reality completely alien to human experience. The journey had only just begun, and the challenges ahead would test every aspect of her training, her intelligence, and her human resilience. Her story of survival was about to unfold in the most unexpected of environments, against a species that viewed existence through a lens humanity had yet to comprehend. The processing center defied every concept of space and structure Elena understood. Massive chambers shifted and breathed, their surfaces alive with complex energy patterns that seemed to pulse with collective intelligence. Prisoners from countless species moved through the area, some floating, some walking, others moving in ways that challenged basic physics. A crystalline translator device materialized near her, its fractal edges catching light in impossible ways. A resonant voice emerged, not from any identifiable source, but directly within her consciousness. Species, human. Classification, unknown potential. Preliminary assessment initiated. Elena stood perfectly still, her years of sinological training demanding absolute control. The Zen Core's communication method was unlike anything in human experience, a blend of telepathic projection and quantum information transfer. Each word carried layers of meaning, cultural context, and emotional undertones that transcended linguistic barriers. The processing chamber began to reveal its true nature. What appeared initially as a detention center was actually an elaborate evaluation system. Prisoners were not simply contained but systematically assessed for their adaptive capabilities, psychological resilience, and potential value to the collective. Nearby, a silicon-based life form from a gaseous planet underwent its own evaluation. Its crystalline structure shifted and reformed, responding to complex energy fields that probed its molecular composition. Another prisoner, a being composed of what seemed like living light, communicated through rapid color variations that danced across its translucent form. Elena realized this was more than imprisonment. It was a massive, living experiment. The translator continued its assessment. Survival protocols engage. Adaptive challenge sequence preparing. Probability matrices calculating individual and collective response potentials. A holographic representation materialized around her, a three-dimensional map of potential scenarios, probability streams flowing like liquid light. Each potential path branched and intersected, showing countless possible outcomes of her future actions. The complexity was staggering, revealing the Zen Core's ability to predict and manipulate potential futures. Her survival suit began to transform. Nanomaterials responsive to the alien environment reconfigured themselves, adapting to the strange energy field surrounding her. What had been a protective layer was now becoming something more, a living interface between human technology and the Zen Core's advanced systems. A group of prisoners caught her attention. They represented a microcosm of galactic diversity, beings that defied her previous understanding of life itself. A creature composed of what seemed like living mist communicated with a crystalline entity through subtle vibrations. Another prisoner, resembling a network of interconnected light threads, moved with a collective intelligence that suggested it was more of a distributed consciousness than an individual. The chamber's purpose became clearer. This was not just a prison, but a complex evaluation center where species were tested, categorized, and potentially repurposed. The Zen Core viewed imprisonment not as punishment, but as an opportunity for comprehensive species analysis. Human subject. The translator resonated. Prepare for initial adaptive challenge. Survival parameters engaging. The floor beneath Elena began to shift. What had been a solid surface transformed into a dynamic environment of energy and matter. Holographic projections created multiple layers of challenge. Psychological barriers, physical obstacles, and cognitive puzzles that would test every aspect of her capabilities. She recognized the challenge for what it was, a comprehensive assessment designed to reveal the deepest potential of her species. The Zen Core were not simply containing her. They were studying her, measuring her adaptive capabilities, her problem-solving skills, her psychological resilience. Around her, other prisoners prepared for their own challenges. Some looked defeated, their spirits broken by previous encounters. Others maintained a quiet dignity, their eyes reflecting accumulated wisdom from countless encounters with the Zen Core's evaluation systems. Elena took a deep breath. Her training had prepared her for extreme scenarios, but nothing could have fully anticipated this. She would need to draw upon every resource, her scientific knowledge, her military training, her human capacity for creative problem-solving. The first challenge was about to begin. The first collaborative challenge revealed the intricate social dynamics of the prison environment. Alina found herself grouped with 5 other prisoners, each from a radically different species, each with unique capabilities that defied her previous understanding of intelligent life. To her left, a being composed of interconnected bioluminescent threads moved with a collective intelligence. Its communication happened through subtle light pulses and vibrational frequencies that required intense concentration to interpret. The creature, which Elena would later learn was called Illumina, seemed to operate as a distributed consciousness, each thread capable of independent thought yet working in perfect synchronization. Opposite her, a silicon-based life form from a high-gravity planet stood motionless, its crystalline structure constantly recalibrated, responding to minute changes in environmental energy. Named Krell by the translation systems, this being communicated through complex geometric patterns that shifted across its surface. Where biological entities might use facial expressions, Krell used intricate crystal alignments to convey emotion and intent. A gaseous entity named Wisp drifted between them, its form constantly shifting, absorbing and releasing information through chemical exchanges. Wisp's communication was a dance of molecular interactions, a language of chemical composition and atmospheric manipulation that required sophisticated sensors to even begin understanding. The challenge before them was not a test of individual strength, but of collective problem-solving. A massive holographic construct appeared, a complex three-dimensional puzzle that required each species' unique abilities to solve. Electromagnetic barriers, quantum entanglement challenges, and multi-dimensional spatial problems demanded a level of collaborative thinking that transcended individual capabilities. Alina recognized the true nature of the test. This was not about defeating each other, but about finding ways to work together despite fundamental differences in perception, communication, and physical existence. Her scientific training kicked in. Years of sinological research had prepared her for first contact scenarios, but this was different. This was survival through understanding, through finding common ground in the most unlikely of circumstances. She began to communicate, not through words, but through a combination of carefully calibrated gestures, mathematical patterns, and collaborative problem-solving. Her survival suit's advanced systems helped translate her intentions, creating bridge points of communication with her alien companions. The Lumina responded first, its light threads creating intricate mathematical projections that mapped potential solution paths. Krell's crystalline structure began to resonate, adding computational layers that refined those projections. Wisp moved through the holographic construct, its gaseous form testing environmental variables and potential interaction points. Alina realized they were creating something far more complex than a simple solution. They were developing a collaborative intelligence that was greater than the sum of its individual parts. Each species brought a unique perspective: the Lumina's distributed processing, Krell's computational precision, Wisp's environmental adaptability, and her own human capacity for creative problem-solving. Hours passed, or what seemed like hours. Time became a fluid concept in the Zincor's evaluation environment. The holographic construct transformed, became more complex, challenged their developing collaborative method at every turn. A breakthrough came not from a single moment of insight, but from a gradual alignment of their different intelligences. The Lumina's light patterns synchronized with Krell's crystal resonances. Wisp's chemical interactions created bridge points of communication. Alina's strategic thinking provided the framework that held their diverse approaches together. As they solved the final layer of the challenge, something extraordinary happened. The barriers between them seemed to dissolve. They were no longer 5 separate entities, but a single, complex problem-solving unit. The Zincor observers noted everything. This was more than a test of individual species. It was an exploration of collective potential, of the ways different forms of intelligence could transcend their fundamental differences. When the final holographic barrier dissolved, Alina looked at her companions. No words were exchanged, but a profound understanding had been established. They had become more than prisoners. They had become a team. The next challenge would test the strength of their newfound connection. The first arena materialized around them like a living canvas of impossible geometries. Walls breathed with energy. Surfaces shifted between solid and translucent states, creating an environment that was as much a challenge as any opponent. Elena and her newly formed team found themselves at the center of a space that defied conventional understanding of physics and perception. Holographic interfaces began to pulse, outlining the challenge parameters. This was no simple combat scenario. The Zincor's evaluation system demanded a complex test of collective intelligence, adaptability, and strategic thinking. A series of energy barriers began to form, each requiring a different approach to navigate. Some responded to electromagnetic frequencies, others to quantum entanglement principles, and some to cognitive resonance patterns that existed beyond traditional sensory perception. Krell was the first to respond. The silicon-based life form's crystalline structure began to vibrate, creating intricate frequency patterns that mapped the energy barriers. Its entire body became a living sensor array, analyzing the molecular composition and energy signatures of their environment. The Lumina responded differently. Its bioluminescent threads began to weave complex light patterns, creating a three-dimensional representation of potential path sequences. Where Krell provided analytical precision, the Lumina offered intuitive pathfinding capabilities that seemed to anticipate the barrier's potential mutations. Wisp moved through the environment like a living sensor, its gaseous form sampling atmospheric conditions, detecting subtle energy variations that even the most advanced technological systems might miss. The entity communicated these findings through rapid molecular exchanges that Elena's suit struggled to fully interpret. Elena recognized the true nature of the challenge. This was not about defeating an opponent, but about collective problem-solving. The Zincore were testing their ability to work together, to find solutions that transcended individual capabilities. Her human perspective became crucial. Where the other species approached the challenge with their unique sensory abilities, she provided strategic oversight. Years of scientific training and military tactical experience gave her the ability to synthesize their individual approaches into a cohesive strategy. The first energy barrier began to pulse with increasing intensity. It was not a static obstacle but a dynamic challenge that adapted to their approach. As Krell's crystal frequencies tried to penetrate its defenses, the barrier shifted, changing its molecular composition. The Lumina responded by creating a complex, light-based interference pattern. Its distributed intelligence began to predict the barrier's potential mutations, creating a dynamic map of potential solutions that existed in multiple potential states simultaneously. Elena realized they were engaged in a form of cognitive warfare. The challenge was not about physical strength or technological superiority, but about adaptive intelligence. Each species brought a unique approach to problem-solving that, when combined, created something far more powerful than any individual capability. Wisp's gaseous form began to interact with the barrier's energy field, creating microscopic fluctuations that destabilized its structure. Where direct confrontation would fail, subtle manipulation proved more effective. Hours seemed to pass, or perhaps minutes. Time became a fluid concept in the Zincor's evaluation environment. The barriers continued to change, becoming more complex, more challenging with each successful navigation. Their breakthrough came not from a single moment of insight, but from a gradual alignment of their different intelligences. Krell's computational precision, the Lumina's predictive capabilities, Wisp's environmental sensitivity, and Elena's strategic thinking merged into a single complex problem-solving entity. As the final energy barrier dissolved, they realized they had done more than complete a challenge. They had created a new form of collective intelligence, a collaborative approach that transcended the limitations of individual species. The Zincore observers noted everything. This was more than a test of survival. It was an exploration of collective potential, of the ways different forms of intelligence could work together to overcome seemingly impossible challenges. When the challenge concluded, Alina looked at her companions. No words were exchanged, but a profound understanding had been established. They had become more than prisoners. They had become a team capable of challenging the very foundations of the Zincor's understanding of intelligence. The next challenge would test the strength of their newfound connection even further. The next phase of the evaluation revealed a hidden communication network that pulsed beneath the surface of their environment. Alina's survival suit began to resonate with strange frequencies, its advanced adaptive systems struggling to interpret the complex information streams surrounding them. Krell was the first to recognize the true nature of the network. The crystalline being's entire molecular structure began to vibrate, creating intricate patterns that mapped the communication pathways. What appeared to be random energy pulses were actually a sophisticated information exchange system that connected every aspect of the Zincor's massive processing center. The luminous bioluminescent threads started to decode the network's underlying patterns. Each light pulse carried layers of information, revealing a communication method that existed beyond traditional conceptual understanding. It was less a language and more a living, breathing information ecosystem that adapted and evolved in real time. Alina's scientific background kicked into high gear. Her years of sinological research had prepared her for complex communication systems, but nothing could have anticipated the depth and complexity of the Zincor's network. She began to map the communication pathways, identifying potential access points and information nodes. WISP contributed uniquely to their exploration. The gaseous entity moved through the network like a living sensor, sampling information streams and creating molecular bridges between different communication channels. Where technological systems might fail, WISP's natural adaptability found unexpected connection points. The network was alive in a way that defied conventional understanding. Information flowed like liquid, changing states, merging, and separating in complex patterns that suggested a form of collective consciousness. Each pulse carried multiple layers of meaning, historical context, predictive algorithms, emotional resonances that transcended individual communication. Alina discovered something extraordinary. The network was not just a communication system, but a living repository of knowledge. Fragments of galactic history, scientific discoveries, and cultural memories flowed through its pathways. Civilizations long extinct left behind traces of their existence, preserved in this intricate information web. Krell's computational abilities began to create a three-dimensional map of the network. What appeared chaotic at first revealed an incredibly sophisticated organizational structure. Communication channels intersected and diverged, creating a living topology of information that was as much an organism as a technological system. The luminous distributed intelligence started to predict potential information pathways. Its ability to exist in multiple states simultaneously allowed it to trace potential communication routes that would be invisible to more linear forms of intelligence. A breakthrough came unexpectedly. Alina realized that the network responded to collaborative thought. The more their team worked together, the more clearly the communication pathways became visible. It was as if the network itself was a test, rewarding collective intelligence over individual exploration. WISP discovered something crucial: hidden communication channels that existed in microscopic gaps between the primary network layers. These subtle information streams carried what seemed to be classified data, fragments of the Zincor's most protected knowledge. Hours passed as they explored the network's depths, or perhaps moments. Time became a fluid concept in this environment of pure information. Each discovery revealed new layers of complexity, challenging everything they understood about communication, intelligence, and the nature of information itself. The Zincor observers watched carefully. This was more than a simple exploration. It was a comprehensive assessment of their ability to understand and interact with a communication system far beyond their original technological capabilities. As they delved deeper, Alina began to understand the true purpose of these challenges. The Zincor were not simply testing their prisoners. They were searching for something, a specific type of intelligence, a potential for adaptation and understanding that transcended individual species limitations. The network pulsed with anticipation. Their exploration had begun to trigger responses that suggested the system itself was alive, responsive, learning from their collective approach. When they finally reached a critical junction in the network, a profound realization settled over the team. They had done more than explore a communication system. They had begun to understand a fundamentally different way of perceiving existence itself. The next challenge would push their newfound capabilities even further. The sixth challenge pushed their collective intelligence to its absolute limits. The environment transformed into a multi-dimensional problem space that defied traditional understanding of physical and cognitive boundaries. What had begun as a simple evaluation had become a profound exploration of adaptive potential. Holographic projections surrounded them, creating layers of challenge that intersected across multiple sensory and cognitive dimensions. Each team member's unique capabilities became critical to navigating the increasingly complex environment. Krell's crystalline structure began to resonate at frequencies that mapped the challenge's underlying mathematical foundations. Its computational abilities transformed the environment into a series of complex equations, revealing patterns that existed beyond normal perceptual limits. Where other species might see barriers, Krell perceived intricate geometric possibilities. The luminous distributed intelligence spread through the challenge space, like a living network of light and information. Its ability to exist in multiple states simultaneously allowed it to explore potential solutions that existed in quantum superposition. Each thread of its being tested different approach vectors, creating a living, adaptive problem-solving matrix. Wisp moved through the challenge space like a sentient atmospheric probe. Its gaseous form sampled environmental conditions at microscopic levels, detecting subtle variations that would be imperceptible to more rigid forms of intelligence. Where physical barriers existed, Wisp found molecular pathways, creating bridges between seemingly impossible spaces. Elena recognized the true nature of the challenge. This was no longer just a test of their individual or collective capabilities. The Zincor were probing the very essence of adaptive intelligence, seeking to understand how different forms of consciousness could work together to overcome seemingly insurmountable obstacles. Her human perspective became crucial. Years of scientific training and strategic thinking allowed her to synthesize the unique approaches of her teammates. She began to see the challenge not as a series of barriers, but as a complex, living system that responded to their collective approach. The environment began to react to their exploration. Barriers shifted and transformed, responding to their collective intelligence in ways that suggested a form of sentience. It was as if the challenge itself was learning, adapting to their problem-solving methods. Krell's computational analysis revealed something extraordinary. The challenge space was not a fixed environment, but a dynamic system that evolved based on their collective approach. Each solution they attempted modified the fundamental parameters of the challenge itself. The luminous distributed intelligence started to predict potential evolutionary paths of the challenge. Its ability to exist in multiple potential states allowed it to trace solution pathways that would be invisible to more linear forms of intelligence. Wisp discovered hidden environmental variables that fundamentally altered their understanding of the challenge. Microscopic interactions that existed below the threshold of traditional perception became critical points of potential breakthrough. Hours seemed to pass, or perhaps mere moments. Time became a fluid concept in this space of pure cognitive exploration. Their collective approach transformed from a simple problem-solving exercise into a profound dialogue with the nature of intelligence itself. A breakthrough came not from a single moment of insight, but from a gradual alignment of their different cognitive approaches. Krell's computational precision, the luminous predictive capabilities, Wisp's environmental sensitivity, and Elena's strategic thinking merged into a single, complex problem-solving entity. The Zincor observers noted everything. This was more than a simple evaluation. It was an exploration of the potential for different forms of intelligence to transcend their individual limitations. As they approached the final layers of the challenge, Elena realized they had become something more than a team. They had created a new form of collective intelligence that challenged fundamental understanding of consciousness, adaptation, and problem-solving. The challenge space began to dissolve, revealing glimpses of something profound. Fragments of information suggested that this was more than a simple test. The Xin Corps were searching for something, a specific type of adaptive potential that existed beyond individual species limitations. When the final barrier dissolved, Alina looked at her companions. No words were exchanged, but a profound understanding had been established. They had done more than solve a challenge. They had demonstrated a form of collective intelligence that defied conventional understanding. The next challenge would push them even further, testing the very limits of their newfound capabilities. The seventh challenge revealed itself as a profound test of collective survival and strategic adaptation. The environment transformed into a complex simulation that pushed their team to its absolute limits, challenging not just their problem-solving abilities, but their fundamental understanding of cooperation and survival. A massive holographic construct materialized around them, representing a compressed galactic scenario. Multiple species faced an imminent existential threat, a cascading systemic collapse that threatened to destroy entire civilizations. Their task was not to prevent the collapse, but to develop a comprehensive survival strategy that could preserve the maximum amount of collective knowledge and potential. Krell was the first to analyze the systemic parameters. The crystalline being's computational abilities broke down the complex scenario into a series of intricate mathematical models. Each potential decision branch created ripple effects that spread across the holographic representation, showing the potential consequences of their collective choices. The Lumina's distributed intelligence began to map potential survival pathways. Its ability to exist in multiple states simultaneously allowed it to trace thousands of potential scenarios simultaneously. Where traditional intelligence might see a single timeline, the Lumina perceived a complex web of potential survival strategies. WISP moved through the simulation like a living sensor, detecting microscopic variables that could fundamentally alter survival outcomes. Its gaseous form sampled potential environmental adaptations, finding hidden pathways of survival that would be invisible to more rigid forms of intelligence. Alina recognized the true nature of the challenge. This was a test of collective decision-making under extreme pressure. Her years of military strategic training and scientific background provided a critical framework for synthesizing their diverse approaches. The simulation became increasingly complex. Initial challenges of resource allocation gave way to more profound problems of cultural preservation, knowledge transfer, and species adaptation. They were no longer simply trying to survive, but to ensure the continuation of collective intelligence across multiple civilizations. Krell's computational analysis revealed hidden patterns of systemic resilience. Some species could survive by transforming their fundamental biological or technological foundations. Others could preserve their essence through complex information transfer methods that transcended physical existence. The Lumina discovered something extraordinary. The survival scenarios were not just about physical preservation, but about the transmission of collective knowledge and potential. Some civilizations could survive by converting their entire cultural and technological essence into pure information streams. WISP found microscopic adaptation pathways that allowed species to fundamentally transform their existence. Molecular-level changes could allow entire civilizations to survive by adapting to completely new environmental conditions. Alina's strategic thinking became the critical framework that held their approach together. She helped translate the unique perspectives of her teammates into a comprehensive survival strategy. Where Krell provided computational precision, the Lumina offered predictive capabilities, and WISP discovered hidden adaptation pathways. She provided the overarching strategic vision. Hours of intense simulation passed, or perhaps moments. Time became a fluid concept in this space of collective problem-solving. Their approach evolved from a simple survival strategy to a profound exploration of collective intelligence and adaptation. A breakthrough came not from a single moment of insight, but from a gradual alignment of their different cognitive approaches. They began to see the simulation not as a challenge to be solved, but as a living system of potential and transformation. The Xin Corps observers watched with increasing intensity. This was more than a simple evaluation. They were witnessing a form of collective intelligence that transcended individual species limitations. As they approached the final layers of the simulation, Alina realized they had created something extraordinary. Their collective approach had developed solutions that preserved not just physical survival, but the essence of collective potential across multiple civilizations. The simulation began to dissolve, revealing glimpses of something profound. Fragments of information suggested that this was more than a simple test. The Zincore were searching for a specific type of adaptive potential that could transform entire galactic ecosystems. When the final scenario dissolved, Alina looked at her companions. No words were exchanged, but a profound understanding had been established. They had done more than solve a survival challenge. They had demonstrated a form of collective intelligence that defied conventional understanding. The final challenge awaited, promising to push their capabilities to their absolute limits. The final challenge transcended everything they had experienced before. What began as a series of evaluations revealed itself as something far more profound, a fundamental test of collective potential that would determine the fate of entire galactic civilizations. The environment around them transformed into a living tapestry of possibility. No longer confined to a simple arena or simulation, they found themselves at the intersection of multiple realities, where potential futures crystallized and dissolved with each collective thought. Krill's crystalline structure began to vibrate at frequencies that mapped entire dimensional matrices. The being's computational capabilities expanded beyond traditional understanding, creating complex models that predicted potential evolutionary paths for intelligent life, where previous challenges had tested individual problem-solving. This final stage explored the very nature of collective consciousness. The luminous distributed intelligence spread across multiple potential realities. Its bioluminescent threads became conduits of pure potential, tracing pathways of development that existed simultaneously in thousands of potential states. Each thread of its being explored a different possible future, creating a living map of collective possibility. Wisp moved between dimensional barriers, its gaseous form sampling the very essence of potential existence. Where traditional sensors would detect nothing, Wisp found microscopic bridges between different states of being, discovering adaptation pathways that defied conventional understanding of physics and consciousness. Alina realized the true nature of their challenge. The Zincore were not simply evaluating their team. They were searching for a specific type of collective intelligence, a form of adaptive potential that could transform entire galactic ecosystems. Her human perspective became the critical framework that synthesized their collective approach. Years of scientific training, strategic thinking, and human adaptability allowed her to bridge the unique capabilities of her teammates. She saw beyond the immediate challenge, recognizing the profound implications of their collective exploration. The environment responded to their collective thoughts. Potential futures began to crystallize and interact, creating a dynamic space where the boundaries between observation and creation became meaningfully blurred. Their collective intelligence was no longer just solving a challenge. It was actively shaping potential realities. Krill's computational analysis revealed the deeper purpose of their evaluation. The Zincore had been searching across multiple civilizations for a specific type of collective potential, a form of intelligence capable of bridging fundamental differences and creating transformative solutions. The Lumina discovered something extraordinary. Their team represented a unique form of collective intelligence that transcended individual species limitations. Each member brought a fundamentally different approach to problem-solving. Yet they had developed a way of working together that was far more powerful than any individual capability. Wisp found the microscopic connection points between different states of potential. Where traditional intelligence saw barriers, Wisp perceived adaptive pathways that could transform entire ecosystems of thought and existence. As they approached the final layers of the challenge, their collective intelligence began to reshape the very environment around them. Potential futures crystallized and merged, creating a living representation of their collective potential. The Zincore observers reached a profound conclusion. This team, this unique combination of different forms of intelligence, represented something extraordinary. They had demonstrated an ability to overcome fundamental limitations, to create solutions that transcended individual species' capabilities. Alina understood now that the challenges had been more than a simple evaluation. They were a search for a specific type of collective potential, a form of intelligence capable of bridging fundamental differences and creating transformative solutions for entire galactic civilizations. In the final moments of the challenge, something remarkable happened. Their collective intelligence began to resonate at a frequency that seemed to catch the very attention of the universe itself. Potential futures crystallized, showing glimpses of transformation that could reshape entire civilizations. The environment around them began to dissolve, revealing the true nature of their journey. They had not just completed a series of challenges. They had demonstrated a form of collective intelligence that could potentially transform the very understanding of existence. When the final barrier dissolved, Alina looked at her companions. No words were necessary. They had become something more than a team. A living testament to the power of collective potential, of finding understanding across the most fundamental differences. The Zen Core had found what they were searching for, and everything was about to change.